Hi, I'm Joseph Thurman, and this is the Thurman Report. And with us today, we have our honored guest, Professor Walters from Detroit. And he's an industrial designer, and he's going to give us just a slice of his life and tell us about what's going on in his world.
Hey, how you doing, Joe? It's a pleasure truly to be here today.
Glad to finally meet you.
Oh, thank you. Well, can I say, upon leaving high school, I was interested in design. Back then, I had a plus in architectural design and another one for art, and I had no clue what I wanted to go ahead and do. But I went down to Cobo to the first electronic show. I don't know if it was the first one for me, and I saw on the computer a house being drawn in 5 minutes, and it came out on the plotter. And I'm looking, and I've had all these design classes, my whole time going to school. And when I saw that, I lost my mind promptly. And the guy said, "That's only a computer. It still took somebody months and months to go ahead and design that.
Right.
It just comes out in 5 minutes." So he showed me the software and showed me how it was done. And I was hooked from then on to find out how I was going to go and do this, because this is what I wanted to be.
Okay. So you're an industrial designer.
Yes.
And what are some of the things that you design?
Well, I've designed the prototypes for General Motors returning cars as we speak right now from 2000 to 2016. Most of those designs were mine, starting with the Pontiac. The Pontiac G-Series was my design. I was the point man for Pontiac. I was the person that did the just-in-time construction. It was then called the integration wall.
Okay.
And this was the marriage between Toyota and General Motors to do the first just-in-time prototype car production. And I was a vehicle launch liaison for Project Pontiac.
Project Pontiac.
Correct.
Like Pontiac, Michigan.
No, like the car.
Like the car.
Yes.
Okay. So, with that being said, what are some of the designs that you've worked on?
Chevy Camaro, Malibu, Caddy CTS, XLR, the new Corvette, the one they call the Stingray, the 2014. All those are from my prototypes.
Okay, and can we see can you show us some of the prototypes that you have?
While I have stuff online, I did bring something with me, but we had to set up to go ahead and show that. But I can show you where I'm at today and where I plan on going with it.
Okay. Okay, so now you have been working on these designs for some time now.
I'd say 10 years at least.
10 years.
Yes.
Okay, so you've worked primarily at General Motors.
I worked for General Motors from 94 to 97. When Mary Barra first came there, she was a 28-year-old white woman with 2 degrees, one for ergonomics and another for being the Chevrolet Fiero factory on the floor.
Okay, okay. So just tell us a little bit about your experience, working with GM. I mean, how was it for you?
Well, I enjoy working at General Motors. However, it is very strict, very racist. They try to play it down like it's not, but I wore a yellow dot on my badge. You could be seen a mile away. The same yellow dot they probably gave to the Jewish when they put them on a railroad car. They had a yellow star on them, promising them they were going to tote to the showers, but they were going to the gas chambers. So this yellow dot would follow me around, and people would follow me to the bathroom or what have you, and play games with me. And I'm like turn the lights out and leave you sitting there on the toilet and no lights, and they flood the sinks. And they hope your shoes are wet so they know who you were and how you did this all day. But I've played these games before, so no wet shoes and no wet pants for me.
Okay. Wow, interesting. Now, in terms of industrial design.
Yes. Industrial design at that time, during the prototype launch for the new vehicle, General Motors in the middle of having an identity crisis, to having lines that were uniquely Pontiac or Chevrolet or Oldsmobile. And they didn't have that. At that time, they all blended together, and they was calling them, all types of names, and Toyota was killing them, and Ford was too. And at that time, they were fixing to launch a vehicle from Germany called the Opel El Capitan, and that was going to wear Cadillac badges and come back here to be sold as a vehicle. I would see that vehicle on the board every day as I passed through the design room on my way to the lunchroom. Now, I myself, there being a trainer for General Motors, I train mid-size car division, room 340-25, cubicle number 1. I trained them for the internet. At this time, they had in-house, voicemail or megaphone or what have you.
Right.
And all their computer work was done in the basement by Ross Perot's company, Electronic Data Systems.
EDS.
EDS.
Good old
correct.
EDS.
Good old EDS.
Okay.
So I learned a little bit of EDS from one of my Indian friends there, and I took that sentence and I made it talk to Lotus Notes. And after I talked to Lotus Notes and EDS, I trained everybody else that can go on the internet and use Lotus Notes to do this. Upon everybody getting trained with that, they would abuse it. That cartoon that came up with Beavis Butthead, "Shut up, you stupid, blank, blank, blank."
Right.
Okay, that played all around the office after I went and showed everybody how to do it on the internet. It was crazy.
So you're responsible for all of that.
I had to bear part of that, yes.
So okay, and so just give me an example of a design of a vehicle that you worked on that's around today, something that has influenced something that we see on the roads.
Cadillac CTS group, the whole group. I designed that myself. I designed it at home, and what it was, when I was at General Motors, I had a task to do every day, and that was to take the car parts in a stack of paper and line them up with a credit card and X the numbers off, and then you give it to the computer guy. After learning the sentence for that, I didn't do that any longer. I get a stack of papers that go direct to the computer, and I'd be done at 10:30, while the rest of the people be done at 2 o'clock or 1:30. So the boss told me there, well, go to the library. You can go ahead and read car design magazines. So I would go there and read car design magazines, and I'd go home, and I would draw them on my computer. And then I couldn't print them because a printer cost $40,000 then,
Right.
So I would take the lights and shut them all off and take my 35mm camera, and I would shoot my screen. And that would give me the picture of what I produced last night with the drawing on the computer software. Then I would take it to General Motors and put it into the photo place, and then give me the pictures out 3 or 4 days later. And this is where I started with the prototype renderings of my vehicles. One by one, they'd be pulled off my cubicle wall and disappeared, and I'm knowing I'm going to be a direct employee now because they keep stealing my artwork. So Cadillac CTS was my idea, my baby, when I went and looked at the Opel El Capitan and see what they want to send over here. So I looked and I said, we should have a 331 aluminum mouse motor inside of this Cadillac. Not knowing it's going to go in Cadillac, but we need to take that motor and do this anyway. Because at that time, General Motors had aluminum and steel motors, and when they got hot, the metals would separate. And now you got to buy a new car. And they didn't care, because if you wanted to buy a cheap car, they said go buy a Ford or a Chrysler.
Right.
And not a Chevrolet. If you wanted an aluminum motor or what, you had to buy a Cadillac or a truck.
Wow. So what changed while you were there?
Wow. A lot changed. The dress code changed. While I was there, we used to wear uniforms with the gray slacks and the blue jackets matching the flag of General Motors. And while I was there, it changed to boat shoes, khakis, and polo shirts. And I would go ahead and price that out, and I looked, and I'm not making enough money to be doing that, because the shoes were $55, the pants were $55, and the shirt was $55. But those engineers were making this money, could go ahead and afford that. So I dared to go and buy knockoffs. I bought some khaki pants and a shirt that looked like polo and some boat shoes. And the day I wore it to work, my boss checked me. Her name is Giulio Pagliagino. She says, "You're out of uniform." And I said, "What? I'm out of uniform?" She says, "Yes." And I said, "Where?" I said, "These are khakis." And she says, "Those are jeans. They got studs." Because the belt loops had studs, so that makes them jeans, although they were not denim, they were. So how dare I argue with her? She said, "I can send you home." So that was the end of dressing like the drones at General Motors, I'd go to the secondhand store and get me suit jackets and have them cut and tailor for my body, and I'd get a new shirt and new shoes and I'd wear that to work rather than wearing the uniform of the drones.
Okay. That's interesting.
Now, the method of production also changed for the car thing because of what they were doing then. Now they want to do a transition to see how they're going to design these cars now. Now, wouldn't it be often say, turn the phone off?
Right. Okay. We're going to need to take a brief break.
For sure.
Okay, this is some really good information, Professor Walters. But right now, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back. Okay, thanks for tuning in. We're here with Professor Walters. He's going over some great information about the industrial design experience that he's had. And so we're going to go back into it. So, Professor Walters, now you work with General Motors and you've got some experiences with that particular situation. So what did you most learn in terms of industrial design from your experiences with General Motors?
Well, I learned about some of the places they have at General Motors where they go ahead and have their competition and they take it loose, as it's called reverse engineering. There's a place they call Mona Lisa. And Mona Lisa will go out buy a brand new Mercedes-Benz or BMW or Ford or what have you, and they'll take it loose, bumper to bumper, take all the screws out, and you have 4 tables there, and the car will be partitioned up until there is no more car, just totally taken loose, to see what they like in another car and incorporate it into their own vehicles. Also had the body and white room. When you go and take a car, it's totally plastic, it's been rendered from clay, and plastic has been put over it, so it looks just like the car. Can't drive it, but it's got everything that needs to be done except for be painted. It is a full-size model. They also had the glass house, which I never got to go visit. I was invited by Ed Welburn. Ed Welburn is a 44-year veteran with General Motors. He's just retired.
Okay.
I met him one day. He complimented on my dress because I was wearing suits and everything every day. And upon meeting him, he shook my hand and told me that I dress very well and I carry myself well here at General Motors. He and I being only 2 black men on the floor, but he just had a desk there. He was at the glass house every day.
Okay.
Upon meeting him, and as he left, all the white boys ran up to me and says, "Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is?" And I'm like, "No, that's Ed Welburn. He runs the glass house. He does Cadillac and Oldsmobile." I'm like, "Oh, wow, you know." So I looked. That's I'm going to go in and visit him one day. But when I did, my car would not open that door, and it wouldn't open the door for the wellness center either, just every place else.
Wow, interesting. I mean, what types of programs and software have you worked with, and what would you recommend?
Well, the software there at General Motors, then they were using Unigraphics in the design room, and it was pretty poor compared to what the Japanese were doing. And that was for the designing room. In the art room, they're not even using computers. They were using something called designer gouache, just a marriage between lipstick and chalk. Really bright colors and really smooth, but not quite lipstick and not quite chalk, but they draw the cars in 1/25th scale, sizes, whatever, and render them in color, but not in a computer. I had a meeting there with Michael J. Marluzzi. He's the king of mid-sizes division guys over. He had 10 guys working for him. And me and my friend Dan Whitfield, the baddest airbrush artist on the planet, and he helped get me this job. We had a meeting with them to show them how to render these prototype cars. So Dan gave a show for airbrush, and I gave a show for what Japan was doing over there across the water with a PowerPoint slideshow.
Okay.
And when I got finished, everybody's face was looking at us in disgust because we're 2 black men here telling a room full of white men how they can do it better by following a group of yellow men. So they had attitude and dragged their feet for this. But they ended up doing it anyway, because you see where we're at now with the Toyota brake scare and all of that and the chips and all that. So they eventually end up doing it with computers. And they do it with Photoshop and Illustrator. then kicking and screaming. But now the software they use now is Autodesk Alias. And Alias is the software to learn for automotive design and rendering. And right now, the learning curve is something to behold. And they're out there looking for a young artist to go ahead and get this learning curve down pat so they can hire them.
Okay.
So if you do learn it is by yourself, or you have the forethought to have your own money, you can go in as a startup for design.
Okay. Which leads me to my next point. So, where do you see yourself going with industrial design, and what would you like to do in the community in that regard?
Well, right now it's more time behind me than in front of me. And I want to pass the baton of design on to our youth, or more capable hands and mind as I start to fail. I like to have a community center, and I'd call it a makerspace gallery. You know, a makerspace for these 21st century skills to be makers for 3D printing and sculpting, and a community center to display the work of some of these people who have mastered the artistry of this 3D printing and sculpting. So I want to train young designers. Well, not just young designers, there are other people out there that have capable art skills that be nurtured and magnified with the 21st century training. I like to go ahead and nurture them and pass the baton of design on to make more industrial designers besides myself to look like this and dance in this magic black skin.
So, you want to cultivate a generation of urban industrial designers?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to do that because right now, General Motors has college creative studies, and they have them taken care of. If you go there, you'll see whites and Asians all taking automotive design and everything, and very few of us doing so. And if you do see some of us, they're doing Photoshop. They're not doing Alias. It's like it's a secret for design. Y'all do this and we'll do that. Just like right now we have DAPSTEP that we've been going to Detroit 30 years now, maybe 35 years now. But at General Motors, they had another engineering group for their kids, and it wasn't DAPSTEP. And I'm saying that because I was in this group. I had 35 kids, along with another engineer, and all of them were white and Asian. None of them were black kids. But they still have in Detroit going on DAPSTEP. Now, out there, they take them on field trips and see the torture tracks and Mona Lisa and whatever. But the kids in DAPSTEP in Detroit would see the design room, maybe a new car in the showroom, and no further. And the engineers will come talk to them about what it is to work and be at General Motors, but really no experience and no exposure was really the meat and the bread of General Motors.
Okay. Okay. So, where do you see everything going in terms of just industrial design, technology-wise? I mean, what new innovations are coming down the line that people need to be aware of?
Oh, well, right now the rush is on to train for industrial design. They're looking so hard for industrial designers looking across the water, what we want to call a SB1 visa holder, and these are the recipients of the NAFTA program that went across the water 40 years ago. NAFTA was called North American Fair Trade Agreement, but I could call it something else. And I'm saying those were 21st century skills that went to Mexico and Indochina to train young engineers, draftsmen, and detailers, mechanics. All that went across the water to NAFTA rather than staying here in America for people to live here in America to look like you and I, to learn these skills, to be ready for the 21st century. So now, 35 years later, nobody knows anything, and now they're dependent on somebody with an SB1 visa card to show them what they sent across the water 35 years ago called NAFTA.
Okay. Also now, from some of our discussions, I know that you are a lyricist.
I'm a lyricist.
Right.
Okay, I've written a few things that rhyme.
Okay. But would you care to share one of your selections?
Okay, it's salacious, but we'll say this. I'm designing easel in my train. The new cars are bumping, come out of my brain. I'm the one, I have the proof, but what I don't have is Figer juice. A missile-proof tank and Cadillac clothes, and ride in style wherever he goes. Mr. Obama, open your mouth. Be a lion, not a mouse.
Wow, wow. Let me ask you this. Now, if someone is interested in industrial design and wants to talk with you, in the audience, do you have any contact information that you would like to provide to them?
Yeah, I can give them my email.
Okay.
It's GEWWALTERS@yahoo.com.
Okay. Could you repeat that one more time for clarity's sake?
GEWWALTERS@yahoo.com. So it should pronounce as JewWalters@yahoo.com, and that's Jew with a G.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Okay, great. So, is there any other information or any last words that you would like to leave with the audience?
I'd like to have them write their congressmen and their senators and their city officials and yell and scream at them and ask them, why are there not any 21st century design classes for our children to take? And I say design class because they say art teacher and then they laugh. But art is the mother and father of math, science, and engineering. And they tend to go ahead and leave that out. And I say that because you're drawing the pyramid walls and in the dirt before you can count 1, 2, 3, there go a deer.
Right. Interesting. So, okay, you just said something that's very profound. You
Yes.
said that art
Art is the mother and father of
of
science
and math
and engineering.
and engineering. Okay.
Correct.
So I want you to elaborate and go deeper with that.
Okay. I'm saying everybody's yelling STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's science, technology, engineering, art with a big A, and math. Now, before you do any engineering, you're going to have a sketch or a thought. It's in your mind. And when you sketch it out, that's art. And that's a communication between you and another person. Now you can see my thoughts here. I can't write them, but I can show them here in sketch, which this is the big birth of design. Once we have design in front of us, we can go and elaborate on another idea and share that with somebody. To write something in a language, you and I both have to know that language, English or French or what have you. But everybody understands a drawn script,
Right.
unless they've never seen that object before.
Right. So when you have art, you need to have the dimensions in order to, I guess, convey that artwork.
I would say that when you say dimensions, it makes me think of engineering, therefore math.
Right.
When I say art, I played with God's Hot Wheels last night, and I woke up and I remember which one I played with, and I go and I draw that sketch. There's no math there. It's just ratio and proportion or whatever, shape and form, color and value. But I remember this. Now, if I take a ruler to it after I've drawn and everything, it says it's got to be this long, that high, this thick. Now I'm engineering.
Okay. Great, great, great. Okay, so before we close, any last thoughts? Any other expressions or anything that you wanted to convey to the audience?
Well, audience, I really like to go ahead and have you talk to your mayor, governor, or what have you, and have a school put aside so we can go after this 21st century training for our youth, which is being denied us right now. With the closing of schools, the firing of art and design teachers, no vocational sciences, no 21st century training, not in urban Detroit. We need to have a education revolution, weapons of mass education.
Weapons of mass education.
Yes.
You should put that on a t-shirt.
That's the seller, huh?
That's the seller. Okay, all right. Well, Professor Walters, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, and hopefully you can come back again sometime.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.
All right. And with that being said, this is Joseph Thurman, and this has been the Thurman Report. And have a great day. Yeah. So.
Okay. Now you need.